All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our April 5th live stream. On the panel, I have so far Blarg, John Clark, and Steve O. And
Howdy.
we should actually be getting a guest pretty soon. I sent the link on the comments for Neo Relic to join us, and that will be our primary topic, which is talking about trans issues. So, with that, how is everyone doing?
Uh, this week was a little rough for me, but I'm good.
What was rough?
That's good.
Uh, I hurt my foot earlier this week, and it's been nagging me the whole week.
Oh dear.
Oh,
Yeah,
Did
not
you get?
bad, but it makes it hard for me to work, so I had to leave a couple days early. But other than
Did you get
that,
a
I'm
ride home on a tow truck?
really
haha.
mad.
Sorry.
That was low. That was low, John.
Yeah, about toe level.
Oh yeah, I know, but still, I'll take the second meeting there.
All right. So we have our guest. So I will add him onto the stage. All right, Neo. Hey, Neo, you don't have to turn on your camera if you don't want. Completely up to you. If you're okay with having it on, you can have it on, but
Thank you.
Not a
you're
requirement.
not required.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not looking too great today, so
Yeah.
That's
So if you
okay.
turn off the camera, then your avatar should come up. Although
oh,
you probably haven't had a
uh,
chance to.
so if I do this,
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
there
There you
you go.
go.
okay, cool.
And you can go into your settings and you should be able to actually, can you do it in the settings or do you have to do it at the beginning?
You
No.
can do it
There's
in setting.
there's a cam button
Yeah,
on the bottom.
yeah. Just on your little icon. Certainly, what I'm looking at on your little icon, there's a little three dots. I think that's where you set it.
I love your accent,
Oh
dude.
yeah. You can click on the three dots and click on edit audio avatar and then you can upload whatever you would like.
Do I have to?
Oh, you don't
No,
have
Nah.
to. You can leave it the way
Okay,
it is. But
cool.
yeah, so then let's just get a little bit started in terms of introduction. It looks like
Okay.
we have Tilting and Jason Katz joining us. Hey guys, hope you guys are doing well. Um, so for you guys, if you didn't catch it at the beginning, we have a guest, Neo Relic. He just goes by Neo, I guess. So Neo, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your faith? Actually, it might be interesting since we're going to be talking about biology. Let us know a little bit about your educational background. I mean, nothing to dox yourself, obviously, but just whatever you think it'd be interesting for us to know.
Um, yeah. I probably have a lot of opinions you've never heard before. A lot of people don't let me speak. They make a lot of assumptions about what I believe, but I really appreciate you guys giving me a chance to talk here. So, I'm an atheist. I've always been an atheist. Um, I have gay and trans friends and family. I would put myself in danger to protect them from assault. So just making all that clear from the beginning. My education, I have a really strong math and science background. Like I was doing differential equations in high school and stuff. And I'm probably the best way to describe it is I'm a polymath. So like an autodidactic polymath or something. Um, I'm not an expert in anything. This issue really is unfortunate to me because my personal issue is men's rights and like men's reproductive rights. But when I'm trying to talk about it with the left, the pronoun thing gets in the way, and then I can't have a voice on their show because I don't, subscribe to their ideology, and that's a little frustrating. So now I've had to learn about all this stuff. And I do have a passion for biology. I hang out with doctors a lot. Um, but I've studied pretty much everything. I don't know. Is that pretty good? Or
What about just in terms of your like formal education?
I have a degree. I kind of got a degree in finance and economics in passing because I realized I needed to study money. But like I said, in high school, like I was doing AP everything. I took 2 years of calculus in high school. I was doing differential equations.
excuse me.
Um,
Sorry.
I got high school credit from middle school. I got college credit at UW from several different classes. I was studying engineering originally. I almost became an attorney. I scored above average on the LSAT and things. Like, I've had to reset my life a lot, and so I've studied in depth a lot of different things. I did music, I did art, I did lots of sports and everything. Like, I'm a true polymath, and I hesitate to say that stuff, but I got to be honest. Like, that's just the truth.
Hey, nothing wrong with having a jack of all trades around.
Yeah. Oh, and if someone wants to talk to an expert on this, there's a guy named called Colin Wright with a W, Wright.
Yeah, I know.
He is an expert on that, and he, if you want a lot of details on this subject, he's on X, he's on everything. Colin Wright would be an expert on this subject.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him. So why don't we then introduce ourselves? Lark, since he's your guest, how about you start?
Yeah, no worries. Yes, it may have come as a slight surprise, but yes, you've been talking to an Australian this whole time.
Yeah, it's
Surprise!
surprising. That's cool. I love it.
That's how they get you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We're just hanging out down here at the bottom of the world, and then bam. Actually, did anyone see Colbert the other night, where he talked about the Australian Prime Minister being venomous?
Oh no.
Oh,
Venomous or poisonous?
venomous.
So
Yeah,
you don't want
being
him to
ven-
bite you. You don't
Yeah,
want
yeah,
him to
yeah.
bite you.
Just everything in Australia is venomous, including the Prime Minister.
But you can eat him.
It was brilliant. My wife and I were just cacking ourselves here, just imagining the Prime Minister go and biting someone. Because in Australia we also know him as DJ Elbow, so he did a bit of DJing on occasions as well. So yeah, interesting fellow. But anyway, yes, I have a background in science. I have degrees in engineering and physics, and I also took the prize at school for biology. So
Excellent.
yeah, so reasonably strong. And I read a lot of papers from Google Scholar. So, and yeah, papers and opinion pieces as well, and Wikipedia articles, and yeah, like
Cool. Hopefully this will be a good combo.
interested in it pretty well everything. So, yeah, that's me. Oh, atheist also, lifelong.
Hmm.
Okay, Steve-O, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll go. Country boy, atheist. Went to school for sociology with a concentration in criminology, but I didn't finish. Almost, but I didn't. Now I'm just more of a blue collar worker, but I do try to keep up as much as I can in terms of just learning stuff on the side. If I can't go back to school right now, so yeah, I try to learn as much as I can. So I try to keep up anyway. Anyway, I'm
Well,
good.
don't forget to mention you've got a master's in bad jokes.
That's John, not me.
All right, then John, why don't you go ahead?
Well, since I got called out there. Hey Neo, I'm John. So I've been an atheist for all of my adult life, much of my late teenage years. So a little bit of a math background myself. Did a little DEFAQ, which I often call defecate. Did a little partial DEFAQ as well. So you and I could probably have a little bit of fun talking about math, so long as we don't go off on a tangent.
No, I like to stay focused if we could. But...
Yeah. So you're not going to co-sign on my math jokes?
Oh,
I'll co-sign, sure. Yeah, that's kind of a tangent.
There it is. There it is.
my God, no.
That is a sign of intelligence. All right. So now in my professional career, the vast majority of my career has been in the client relations, sales, marketing background. And also, I do have a fondness for the dad jokes.
Very
Yep.
much so.
He's notorious amongst us for that.
Just read the comments when you can.
It's really the only reason we put up with him.
Yeah, everything else. I've got a face for radio and a voice for print. It's fine.
All right, so I'll go next. So my name, well, you can just call me QC here. And I was much more active in the YouTube comments in the past. And I started this channel to kind of have a platform for people to have these type of discussions. And I actually, in order to kind of help, find people for the channel, because frankly, I wasn't really getting anyone on the YouTube channels. Most people were very reluctant to actually have a conversation. They would rather just kind of stay hidden behind in the safety of their keyboard. So I moved over to X. I had an account there from before, with pretty good size following. So I've been using that, and I've been more active there now than on the YouTube channel comments. So I've been kind of able to bring over different people from YouTube comments. So I'm actually very happy having someone from the YouTube comments on, because the last few times it's been from Twitter, and I have seen Colin's tweets, and I've responded to some of them. So from a background point of view, I have a major in philosophy, but at the same time, I pretty much had double majored in biology as well. And I went into into a PhD program. I've, run experiments, ran a lab for a while, and this was in molecular biology. So I have a pretty strong science and biology background, but that was a while ago. I've since changed my career, and so I didn't complete the PhD program and went more into technology, which is where I am right now. So, but yeah, and it's been a while since I've been steeped in the biology, but a lot of stuff that we talk about, doesn't, we aren't talking about like specific transcription factors and what the analogs are, et cetera. So it isn't at that level, so it's fine. And before I kind of turn over to our main discussion, I did want to share this, because we were talking about the Prime Minister of Australia, and this is from that whole the penguin thing, right, where what's his name, Trump had put in a tariff on the something by McDonough Island. I can't remember what the first part is, but basically an island with no one on it, but he put a tariff on it, and the only thing that's there are penguins. So this person, Jack Kimball, he's the representative of the 54th district of California, and California only has 52 districts. So it's a parody account, and it's kind of funny. I follow him. So he said, people who ignore the threats that penguins pose have obviously not heard of the Emu War. Australia lost. So I kind of made a joke. Australians are weak. Unlike us Americans, they live in a land with cute koalas and platypuses. I'm pretty sure that there are no dangerous animals in Australia. How dangerous can animals with pouches be? So that was me just poking a little fun at my Australian friends. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic because Australia is known to be pretty dangerous with the drop bears, right?
Animals.
The drop
was that?
bears.
Yeah.
It's nothing but dangerous animals. Even the kangaroos will clock you.
They'll let
Here's
you
a-
flat out, man. Ay.
So here's a drop bear. You better watch out for the drop bear.
The funny thing about koalas is that they are literally as dumb as it's possible for a mammal to be. They,
I mean, pandas are pretty dumb.
well, you can put a plate of their favourite food. You can put a pile of
Oh,
leaves
yeah.
on a plate of
Yeah.
their favourite food. They won't eat it because they can't recognise that it's food.
Unless it's in the tree, right?
They
Well,
have,
it has to be on the branch. It has to be.
Yeah.
On
It has to be on a branch because otherwise it's not food. Yeah.
Well, bees, if you move the hive a foot, they can't find it, right, or something.
Sorry.
If you move a hive of bees, they can't find it, right? Like you don't have to move it very far, and that's what I've heard. I'm not
Yeah,
sure, but
It
gotta
depends.
move 'em bit
there.
by
It
bit.
really depends.
Yeah, if you don't want to move them very far, yeah, you can just, and you don't want to lose the bees that are out. But I think you can just pick up the hive at night and move it.
when they're all in there.
Yeah, But if you want to just shift it, we were doing that with some Australian native bees. They don't have. Here's the irony: Australia has bees that are native. They aren't venomous. They can't sting you. They don't have stingers. But if you annoy them, they will cover you in little brown globs of goop. Just ask me how I know. And every time you walk past it, you get swarmed by the little bastards. Just they're hilarious.
That
But
is that is hysterical.
I just want to say, if you don't mind, I think this is a great group. I feel like I'll actually be able to talk with you guys. A lot of times, people don't have much of an education, sadly, and they're just very antagonistic or something. I feel like we could actually have like a scientific discussion with this group.
yeah, no, that's why I thought you'd actually probably do quite well, because our conversation, even though things started a bit rocky, have been in the chat was pretty smooth.
Yeah, you know
There
how it goes
wasn't.
online. Everybody just attacks you, and then you get into this defensive mode, and then because I'm
Yeah.
having multiple conversations, and sometimes that aggression carries over because I don't know.
It could happen.
Yeah.
Well, and that was the reason for me setting this up, because my thought was that you can, you're definitely going to be a lot more antagonistic in the comments, and I'm definitely guilty of it myself. But my thought was that, once you actually know the person or talk to them, it's going to be very different. And for the most part, it's true. I think for the people where it won't be different, where their toxic personality is just the same, are probably ones who are not going to want to get on and talk and have a discussion,
Right.
because they just can't. I mean, I don't think they would be capable. So so far, when for the most part, not everyone, but when we have people on, they've been able to have a civil discussion. There was one guy, he calls himself a pastor, and it was very clear that he's probably someone who abuses his kids and his family.
Yeah.
It
And
lasted maybe 30 seconds.
yeah, when he got on, he just went crazy, and I just like pumped him. So, but just from talking to you so far, I don't think that's an issue. And it sounds like we disagree about some of the things. So why don't let's just get into it.
I'm excited to talk to
You
you guys.
said, yeah, and you said the whole pronoun thing was. Oh,
The
so have you
issue.
called into some of these shows
I
then, and then just didn't
I
work
called
out
in.
because of
I
that?
called. Sorry. I called into the line a lot of times, and every time they asked me my pronouns, and I said, "Can we just skip that?" Because I want to talk about the science. And then they get high and mighty and all mad that I'm not just bowing down to them, and then that becomes the issue. I can't get on the show, and then I get blocked and stuff. And to me, that kind of feels like at the mission when, like, the homeless people are forced to go to prayer just to have a warm, safe place to sleep at night. To me, that's disgusting. That's repulsive. That's and I feel like that's what they're trying to make me do, like bow down to their ideology. It's like my feelings don't matter, only their feelings matter. And I couldn't ever have a conversation. I really want to talk about men's reproductive rights and other men's rights, but this issue of trans has gotten in the way of having like a scientific or intelligent conversation about my issues, and so was forced to learn about this. And then maybe we disagree and stuff. And biology is complicated. I mean, you guys are all intelligent, so you know that.
So
But
were
there's
you
some
never
things that I
able
think
to
are,
get on at all?
yeah, a couple. One time I was able to talk about men's rights a little bit, and then the second time, it's hard to get past the call screeners. And then the second time I got on with Matt, and then as soon as he saw that like I didn't have pronouns listed, he just wouldn't. I was like, "Let's talk about the science, Matt. Let's talk about the science." And he's like, "No, I don't care what you want to talk about." I'm like, "I called in to talk about the science. Like that's what I wanted. I wanted to talk about sexual differentiation." And he just wouldn't let the pronoun thing go. And I'm just like, God, I don't want to have that conversation. I mean, I don't mind having that conversation, but I called in to talk about something specific.
So I feel like I've heard that. I mean, I may have heard your
Probably.
call. What name did you call when you called in?
What's that?
What name did you use when you called in? Was it
Oh,
Neil?
No, I don't even remember. Like, I'm kind of a privacy nut, and I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
there's
yeah.
no such thing as privacy with, especially with AI and everything coming out. It's like there's no going to be no privacy in the future. But I like to hold on to as much as I can. Well, I can. So I don't remember. I think I used my name on the first when I talked about men's rights. I used my name on the line. I talked to a trans woman and another woman, like a biological female.
Well, yeah, I was just kind of curious because it just sounded familiar, so I was just trying to,
Yeah, you probably did.
because I don't think it was that long ago, right?
No, it wasn't too long ago. And then they blocked me across everything. He blocked me across all of the platforms. And I tried calling
Yeah.
in with other numbers and trying the web thing, and I just can't get through these people. They won't listen. They won't listen to me. So I appreciate you guys. Like,
Okay. So I'm not going to kick you out or anything for the pronoun thing, but um, let me just ask, why not just give your he him pronouns? What is
like
the
I said, it like with the mission metaphor, it's like they're forcing me. It's like a control thing. Like they're trying to dominate me or something. And this is one aspect of it. There's another, but one aspect, it's just like forcing me into their ideology, or bow down, or you can't have a voice, you can't be heard, you can't, and it's just like the mission making people go to the prayer when they're not religious in order to have a warm and safe place to sleep at night. That is offensive to me. That they would
okay?
make
Wait,
somebody.
let me ask you. So you at least understand why they do that, right?
I think so, because I think trans people suffer a lot from struggling to find their identity, I guess, and when they feel like maybe they found an identity that helps them cope with whatever issues they're dealing with, when somebody continues to say the opposite or something, that can make them feel bad. Like I went down to Arizona with a couple of doctors, and they had another friend who's a doctor, and he is now a she. I was there for the surgery. Like he had his penis turned into a vagina, and I'm very supportive. I'm looking at his dildos, the expansion dildos and stuff. I don't have a problem with trans people, and what I do have a problem, in the Middle East when they're throwing people off buildings and cutting their heads off and stuff. Like I would fight to protect them from that. So I want to be very clear. You know,
Okay, so
So I
you
guess
you
I,
are
I guess
aware. Oh, go ahead.
no. So I guess what is the nature of when you what what's your complaint?
well, so again, this is. I don't want to get off on tangents. Like I did call in to talk specifically about the science of sexual differentiation.
So okay, then I guess my question is, are you viewing this from exclusively a sex rather than gender perspective?
So my issue is with when I look into this stuff, I see people and I hear people all the time everywhere on social media saying that sex and gender are the same thing, and they're not. And I think you guys know that they're not. But I feel like it needs to be really clear, like what sex is. And biologically, sex literally is the fusion of two different gametes. That's what it is.
Well, that's the verb.
Right.
But the
That's what sex is.
yeah, well, as I said, that's the verb of sex. But in
Right.
terms
And
of
then
this context, we're talking about the noun.
right. Right. And so then determining which sex you are in sexually reproducing organisms, you would look at the gamete type. Especially, I mean, that's what, when you sex animals of all different species, because you can't just look at humans, right? Like,
Yeah,
again,
but
this gets, hmm?
here's there's a problem with the discussion about sex though, and
Okay.
you've already touched upon it, which is to say that trans people are not making a claim about sex.
Well, some do though. That's one of my issues is I hear them all the time. Some people just don't. Some people are saying that the way you feel inside is the same as like your biology,
Look,
and it's
there
just
is some
scientifically
truth
inaccurate.
in that statement because there
You
is
can't.
biology in the skull that creates this sort of situation. It's observable via
Like,
MRI.
are you talking about the brain scans?
Yeah, but
Well, that's
the
you know,
vast majority, like honestly, the vast majority of trans people are
Couldn't
not
that
making
be
a claim about their pants, what's in their pants. They're only making claims about what's going on in their head.
okay? Good. And like there are several points. Like that's just one, and that's again, I agree. That's not very many people are doing that compared to what most people are saying, and so that's kind of a minor issue. But there are many others. Like I was saying, like what sex is the fusion of the gametes. That's
Yeah,
what
but again,
sex
it's not
is.
relevant. It's not relevant to the
Right.
question of trans people's existence. So the problem
Well,
is,
I'm just trying to get people to understand science. I don't like all the ideology stuff.
Okay, hey
That's,
Neil.
I agree, that's completely separate.
Okay,
Like
Neil.
identity stuff. Sorry,
Let,
the
let's let
gender identity
let's
stuff.
let hey Neil. Let's let Blarg finish what he was saying. Go ahead, Blarg.
Sorry.
yeah, so the point I'm trying to make is when people come on and say things like what you do regularly with your all caps, there is no third sex because there is no third gender, there is no third gamete.
Correct.
That's entirely correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
And no biologist is going to argue that that's not
Right.
true,
But I hear people
except it's
arguing it all the time.
except
Okay,
there
so
is.
hey Neil, let's. I know you're excited, but let's kind of let him finish, and then
Yeah,
everyone's gonna
Sorry.
get a chance to
Yeah,
talk.
this
it's all
is a
right.
good group. I'll try to control myself better. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah. We'll
You're
definitely
doing
give you
better than
plenty
the
of
vast
time to
majority of the
talk.
guests so far.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
You're
We'll
acting,
definitely
you're acting
you'll
more like a debate than actual,
Yeah,
raising everybody.
I get worked up
yeah.
because people are attacking me constantly, like all day, every day on the internet. And I know that that's not what this group, I can feel like you guys are educated and we can have a conversation. So I'll try to control myself better. I apologize.
It's all
Yeah, no,
good.
you're right.
All good.
So the problem is that when people come in with what you're saying, you're saying that you're making a statement about the inaccuracy of a comment of certain people's comments about sex. But this is the real problem is that this is usually used as a straw man attack against trans people
But I'm not doing
who
that.
aren't making.
You're
Yeah,
not.
I'm not saying you are, but what I'm saying is that this is why it's easy to misinterpret what you're saying. So people use that to say, no, they're bullshit because what's in your pants is what sex and gender are identical, and you can't have another gender, you can't have another thing because the gametes you've got define who you are,
Well,
and
can
that's
I,
where the problem is. So people usually start where you are in order to push that ideology, and then the rest of us see what you say, and just assume that's the path you're going to take because everybody
right.
else does.
Right. But is that my problem or their problem that they're making assumptions?
Well,
Like making assumptions the person that's making assumptions instead of asking questions is the person that's making the mistake and has the problem. And
yeah, but
I get what you're saying. And I'd also like to say, like, I understand what you're saying when you say gender, but that is like semantics because historically, like gender and sex have been synonymous. Now, I don't care if people want to say gender is shorthand for gender identity, which is kind of how it started. But when it crosses in, when keep hearing people kind of make claims about biology that aren't true, that it bothers me and I have to stand up.
Okay, but
yeah, and
so Neil,
so do
you
I.
understand that kind of like what Blarg was saying, that when people give kind of arguments like what you're giving, and you may not be making the argument that they think you're making, and also when you say things about, well, I'm not going to give a pronoun because I'm bowing to, I don't know, pressure or whatnot. Those are kind
They
of things
should
that
learn to ask
people.
questions instead of making assumptions, and they should
No,
respect my
I understand,
feelings
but
too.
well, so but what I'm saying is that people who are actually vehemently anti-trans to the point where they do want to, get rid of trans people, those
Well,
are the
here's the
arguments that they're
solution.
using.
Here's the solution: is how about people from inside that group start criticizing the people that say things that are incorrect, and then I won't have to do this because then I can talk about men's rights instead of talking about stuff I don't even care about.
So, first of all, you definitely seem to be carrying a lot of weight of the previous conversations that you've had on this topic. It does feel as though I'm sensing a lot of anger in sort of your tone. I'm not trying to be all woo woo or anything like that, really just sort of express empathy as somebody who has been on the receiving end of some pretty vitriolic conversations in real life and online. Um, you know, our intent is not to come across as attacking. We do want to make sure that we are. We're discussing the topic here. I would be curious to know. You say that there are only two genders because.
Well, that's if you're defining sex and gender the same. If you're not, which I'm okay with, if it's shorthand for gender identity, that I'm fine with that, then they're different. So it's
What
semantics. Semantics is literally how you define words, and so this is a definitional thing, and it causes a lot of confusion and arguments online. I see because they're using the same word to mean different things, and they don't even know it.
Sure.
But it is
So
an
what
important
sex or what
semantic.
gender are hermaphrodites?
So there are no documented cases of a true human hermaphrodite. So are you speaking about like
Yeah, there
other
are.
species?
Yes, there are.
Because
No,
it
the
would
World
be
Health Organization has found over 500 of them. I can send you the link to the
yes.
study on this.
Yeah,
But
I found
Send me
case
that. I would.
studies as well
yeah,
of a person with
Okay,
ovotestes.
so two things. One, send me the link. I'm happy to change my mind if I'm proven wrong. And then two, I would consider them both male and female if they're functionally producing eggs and sperm. I would
so
call
then
them both male and female, like I would
right,
with
but then
any other species.
wouldn't that be a third classification? You've got male,
No,
female, and both. That's a
no,
third classification.
there's still only two types of gametes. There's still only two options. That if just because you're doing both. And again, so this again is almost like just a definitional issue. This is more of a semantic argument, you know. And I could loosely agree with you, you know, but if I'm going to be strict about it, I feel like that's not a third category. That's a combination of two existing categories.
Sure. So you
Like
know as well as I, being a polymath, you know as well as I do that part of the problem with set theory is if you get too strict of a definition on the set that you're defining, you rule out everything until the set becomes null. But if you make it too broad of a definition, then you have an infinite set. So you're trying.
But this is really a clear-cut definition. Like in all species that we know of so far, you know, on Earth, there is only sperm and egg in sexually reproducing, you know, species.
Sure. So,
It's
Neo,
really clear-cut.
Neo, I will gladly extend to you the courtesy of allowing you to finish your statement without interruption. If you would please extend it to me.
Sorry.
No worries, no worries. You're used to a much more confrontational and a much more blood sport style of conversation. And
Yeah,
believe me,
everybody just attacks me personally all the time, and I get so mad because it's like nobody's rational, and it's just so upsetting to live in a society where nobody has a brain. I don't know.
and believe me, as somebody who has engaged in more than his fair share of blood sport debate, I'm somewhat infamous for it on this channel and in the comment section. But I feel your frustration. I can hear it in your voice. But the point that I would make is I think that your set definition here is too strict, and here's why. Because in your own statements, you're saying that people can fall into only one of two categories, male or female, except that we have documented cases of people that can exist in a third state, which is male, female, and by your own words, both. So they can't be both simultaneously without being neither simultaneously. That's almost definitionally true. But even if it's not definitionally true, by our set theory definitions, that would still constitute a third category. So now we're talking about people that are producing both simultaneously, but what about people that produce neither? So if we go off of the definition of those that produce egg and those that produce sperm, we by definition and by example can see examples of those that produce sperm, those that produce eggs, those that produce both, and those that produce neither. So your binary definition at this point has become tetranary, just off of the standard that you've set forth. But I'm wondering that clearly you disagree, so I'm wondering what I'm missing out of your definition that seems to be apparently true.
So I mean, like I said, I can't like really strongly disagree with what you're saying in a general sense, but when I think about it biologically, I would not consider the combination of two to be a separate category in the strictest sense. And then for the ones that don't produce, I mean, you would look at what they would normally have developed to produce. So, like for example, somebody in humans, chromosomes seem to matter. Not in all species, but in humans, chromosomes seem to matter. I'm unaware of any. Maybe you can show me things that I'll take a look at it that say different. But of any human that has a Y chromosome that's produced eggs.
Yeah, I
And
just put up a citation to Zeki.
am I able to
And
find this after this conversation? Is this all in the
it's
can I
Yeah,
find
these are public journals. So you could just search for the title and
what's
the
let me
author.
write it. Let me write. I should be taking notes or something.
Well,
and it
I mean,
usually does
you
show
can see this. You can see
the
this when
chat.
you watch the video again, and also in the chat. So
Oh, okay. But so I wouldn't consider somebody that's producing neither sperm or egg a separate category either, because I would see it as a disorder. Some sort of malfunction happened, and they would have normally produced one or the other, and so whichever
well,
one that they would normally have produced is what I would
Right, but okay,
loosely
so
categorize. That again, like I can't be. To me, this isn't the biggest issue, but I think it's important to talk about like intersex conditions and stuff. But
yeah. Yeah, they would have like gonads of both sexes. It's just that they're not
his
fully
tissue,
functional.
yeah, they'd have ovarian or testicular tissue, but as far as I know, nobody with a Y chromosome has ever produced an egg.
so
Yeah,
I'm
these
not
people
coming.
have.
Yeah,
Sorry, was that on?
again, I just have to see and I'm open to being proven wrong and stuff, but I do need to see the
Yeah,
Sure.
so from table one, they've got a person. They're citing a reference from Varp et al. 1992 of a person who is 46XX, 46XY. So they have a Y chromosome. When they were 29 when they delivered a healthy male baby by cesarean. So
yeah,
and in that,
again, all these case examples I have to look at. I have to look at them and everything.
My
So it's hard to
concern.
say much now,
Sorry.
but I'll look at them.
My concern, Neo, just in the and I don't think this is intentional, but over the course of the conversation, it seems to me that there's a bit of the moving of the goalpost already, and here's what I mean. And I don't think there's malicious intent here, but we've talked about folks that have produced produce sperm, produce egg. So those are the only two categories. Well, so we bring up an example, and we can show documented cases of people that produce both. So, but that's not a third category, even though it is, because a person who produces a sperm produces 0 eggs, and a person who produces eggs produces 0 sperm. So those are two separate sets, or two separate subsets. And so here's a third subset. But then when we say, well, if somebody's producing none, but then you say, well, that doesn't count because that's a disorder. So, and I'm not saying that it isn't a disorder or a contrary to, for lack of a better term, normal genetic expression. But here we have sort of, again, definitionally, where we say, okay, well, hold on, here's where it seems to be sort of logically inconsistent. And the response that I'm hearing is, well, no, that doesn't count and that doesn't matter because, and then the definition that you want to work off of seems to further refine itself. And by doing that further refining is where I'm seeing a moving of the goalpost logically. Do you think I'm being unreasonable there?
No, I see what you're saying, and again, it's you may be interpreting my willingness to partially concede to you as a moving of the goalpost, but so
Well, actually,
and I didn't wait.
it's actually
Can I
the
say?
part where you're not trying to concede.
Well, hold on. Can I say one thing too? Because you guys are worried about when I say no third sex because no third gamete could be used to go into some extremist views or something. when you guys talk about like these really specific intersex conditions, or not necessarily you guys, but like when people talk about these intersex conditions, I kind of worry that because first of all, most trans are not intersex. Most trans are unambiguously male or female. So like in terms of combat sports or something that matters, so I'd hate to see it like be used in
Yeah,
that way.
that's definitely a good point.
And
And
that's sorry, go on, Q.
yeah, I was just gonna say the reason why these things are brought up, things like chromosomes and genes and all that, is because I think majority of the scientists who study this sees sex as not a result of one specific factor. It's not karyotype that does it. It's not a specific gene that does it. It's not even things like how they develop. It's just because it's a combination of those things. Like in utero, the amount of hormones that the mother may have be expressing at the time for different reasons, that can that can impact the development of the the organism to where they may become a different sex than what's in their karyotype. Things like you have epigenetic factors. There's a reason why you have a liger and tigron, even though they both come from a combination of a lion and a tiger, because there are epigenetic factors in the egg that determines how that offspring comes about. And ultimately, it also affects how the brain develops, and that's where the brain mapping comes in, where depending on all these different multiple complex factors, you may get a brain that might be closer to a sex that's different, that's trans, to what the gonads may be expressing. So that's where I think these things come up just to show that biological sex is bimodal, not binary. So
Yeah, I just put up another paper by Nguyen from pharmacology, neuropharmacology. What's sex got to do with it? The role of hormones in the transgender brain, and it talks really nicely about this exact issue. It's
yeah,
one
I've
I've
read
had
that
for
one.
a long
That's
time.
a good one. Yep.
Yeah, and how sex differentiation occurs at one point during fetal development, but the brain develops over a long period, and as a result, it's possible to have a different result. The androgen hormone effect upon the brain can act for a long time, and as a result, you get different results.
Okay, can I
So,
respond now?
sorry.
Like, I don't want to interrupt. I feel bad about it. So I'm taking notes now. So I have three things.
Yeah, go for
So
it. Ask away.
so one thing you guys talking about specific genes contributing stuff. You're aware of the SRY gene, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I would have a question. So if in terms of like developing different types of tissues in the body and using that to determine sex, say I take estrogen and I develop breast tissue, does that make me a female?
Well, it depends upon your definition of female. If you're
So
not a
you say
trans
that.
person,
Wait. So
if you're not a trans person, then no, it doesn't make you a female in either sex or gender. And in fact, a lot of men do develop breast tissue.
I, I'm unclear about what you mean. I'm presumably XY. I definitely have the anatomy and things. If I took estrogen, or even if I took testosterone for trying to build muscle, and I developed some breast tissue and even lactated, you're saying that's possible for me to be assigned female.
No, I'm saying that if a person self-identifies as female, they're talking about what's inside their brain. A person's
Wait, 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 wait,
external.
wait, 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 wait. So you're saying that not man or woman, but you're saying if they feel like a female, you're going to call them a female?
No, it takes more than just you feel like a female. This is a little bit like you feel like you're attracted to the people of the same sex. It's not a choice that people have in their life. It's hardwired into their brain. It's structural in the way they are. So yes, they do feel like a female because that's what their brain is telling them. So cis females feel that they're biologically female, they're anatomically female, but they're also psychologically female. Their brain tells them they are female and they feel that way. So, and similarly, men typically have their sex match their gender. So as a result, when men start to develop breast tissue, they start to suffer from a very mild form of a dysphoric sort of position associated with their body because they're looking at their body and it doesn't match the way their brain tells them they should be. So as a result, many opt for surgery to correct the condition. Yeah, so the sex exists in your body, the gender exists in your brain, and most people are lucky enough to have those two in they're congruent, but some people don't get that. Does that make sense?
So I'm going to have a few things. So you're saying, like, or I should ask, do feelings matter for determining sex?
If it depends, it depends on what. Is it just a temporary, like a little kid putting on a little boy putting on a dress and
So you're
dancing
saying
around?
yes.
I'm saying that everything's complicated, as was the preface. There's no simple answers.
But you're
But in
saying
the
it's
case that
possible.
a
You're saying you're
yeah,
going to include somebody's feelings in determining their biological sex.
no,
Yeah, I think
no, 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 no. It's
it's about
always
how you
gender.
are. It's about how you're calling it just feelings, right?
Yeah.
Feelings as you think, hey, I feel like having a ice cream. It's not that type of feelings. It's like an innate identity that comes out, and it's
Okay,
not something that you can just make up.
Do you feel like
can I give you
okay,
an example from my own life? So, growing up, I have a very liberal mother, and had long hair, colors, all these different patterns on my clothes and things. I did not have a strong masculine role model. My dad was largely absent, and my family spread out across the country. And I ended up behaving very feminine, very stereotypically feminine. So much so that I didn't realize for a long time I was getting hit on by gay guys all the time because they thought I was gay. And it took me a long time to figure out what was going on, and that my environment was pushing me towards these stereotypical behaviors, which may be reflected in my brain scans. And it wasn't
No,
until I started, until I figured out what was happening, and I see it happening to my nephew too, because my sister's just like my mom, and I started to take active steps to presenting more stereotypically masculine, that I stopped wanting to kill myself.
so to be clear,
okay.
I just want to make sure I understand. First of all, that does sound like a rather weighty and traumatic experience, which should not have happened. And I wish that it had not for you. But what I hear, and please let me know if I'm being oversimplistic, you had a certain expectation that you felt was forced on you. And when you saw other alternatives and you expressed yourself via those alternatives, you felt more at peace with yourself and your identity. Am I mischaracterizing anything
I,
about your story, what I just summarized?
I think it sounds fairly right. I mean, but
Okay.
inside,
So
I
then
still feel like
how is that any different than what a trans person is saying?
that's exactly my point. Thank you. That is exactly my point. Is how do we know that this isn't happening to other people?
Well, the point
No,
is
no, no,
that
no, no.
that a
The
trans
question.
person who is saying that they have had forced upon them the social norm that you're trying to achieve, they're saying that is running counter to to what they believe in their bones to be true about them, is that there's this other way to identify themselves that they feel is more a pure expression of who they truly are. So what
Yeah,
I'm
see that.
saying is that
Right,
you
and I'm
actually,
saying what I'm saying is that I agree, and what I'm saying is though, but in society trying to help those people, they might have hurt a lot of other people like me.
Now, question, just a quick
Well,
question.
that's
At
important.
any
What I just
point,
said, I feel
yeah,
is really important.
yeah, this is directly relevant. At any point, did you think of yourself as a female
So the gay doctor
while you were
was
dressed,
taking care of me
while you were
for a while.
dressing that way?
This
Did you
gay,
think of yourself?
I'm trying to
Not
answer
what
that. So
others. Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to answer that. So this gay doctor that was taking care of me for a while, he asked me. I picked up this thing, a sheet of ice or something, and we're looking at it and we're talking. I'm like examining stuff, and I guess he's hinting at like break it or whatever. And then he asked me, are you a boy or are you a girl? And I thought about it. Never really thought about that before. I'd never really, thought about any of this gender ideology stuff before. And I broke it on the ground because that was the masculine thing to do, although I was more interested in keeping it.
Yeah. So was the answer, are you a boy or are you a girl? Did you ever think of yourself as a girl?
I still currently know that I internally am much more feminine, but I also know I'm a biological male.
No. But do you think of yourself as a girl? Because you were uncomfortable once you realised what was going on with the way people were interpreting you. You took a hard turn to say, okay, now I realise what's going on. I don't want to be perceived that way, so you changed. This would say to us that you always thought of yourself as male. Yes, you can have feminine attributes of your maleness, but did you think of yourself as a girl at any point? Did you consider yourself to be female?
Well, I don't know if I ever considered myself to be a boy either. I don't think I ever thought of it.
What about now?
I
Do you
still,
feel that you're a girl?
I think those are all like stereotypes and sexist stereotypes at that, which is ironic because everybody's fighting against sexism by being sexist, which is weird.
Well,
But,
no, it's just how you are inside your head. Because
well, I'm a
you
mix
can
of
behave
I'm
any
a
way you
mix of
want.
masculine and feminine identities, but my body is very definitively biologically male.
And I
Yeah.
think that's what we're getting at is in general is it's like I said, it's been more complicated than what just a
I
basic
I do
binary.
not consider how I feel or how I act to be part of my biological sex. I do not consider my
Nobody's
feelings or my
asking you about
identity
your
to be
biological
part
sex.
of the way that I define my biological sex, and it feels like you guys are.
I'm not, at no point have I asked you about your biological sex. I'm asking about how you feel inside your head.
Right, and I'm saying I feel like you guys are using feelings to determine biological sex. Like you're
At no point,
incorporating it
no.
in all the factors you're considering to determine something that's not determined
No.
by
We're
feelings.
we're
No,
we're just
how?
asking one question.
It, it absolutely is not. I'm very specifically differentiating the difference between what you have in your pants and what you have in your head. So that's why I keep asking, did you think of yourself? I didn't say, did you look down at your nuts and say, oh, that's a boy's nuts. I'm asking, do you feel inside your head that you
So
are a girl
to me,
at any
this
point?
to me, this is the same as racism. Wait, let me explain. Growing up, I had friends of all different races, and I didn't know what racism was. I had to learn what racism was, and I feel the same about all the stuff you guys are talking about right now.
I mean, we're just asking you. I mean, Blarg is asking you just very one specific question in
Um,
terms of
It
internally
does seem
what you
like you're
think.
reluctant to give a
Here's
definitive answer.
Well,
here's
no,
another way
I'm
to look
giving a
at it.
definitive answer. Is that I don't see myself as either, and I think those are sexist stereotypes, and I think that I can have stereotypically feminine and masculine characteristics without it affecting my my sex at all. It's completely irrelevant in my opinion. And I don't see myself as like I'm a man or I'm a woman because I just don't think like that. Like I don't think about racism because I didn't grow up that way. When I see
So
people of
you
different
see your
races,
so
I
you
didn't
were
know
so
I
you,
was supposed to discriminate.
so you've always perceived yourself in a very non-binary point of view.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that because we got to talk about the definition of what I'm not sure how you're using that word, but
Mentally.
it's just was more like nothingness, more like non-existence than like this.
Right. So you
Like
thought of yourself as not a part of the binary spectrum.
no, not even that. Like just I'm just a person. Like I never thought of myself in terms of my race. I was just a person, and didn't think of myself as a man or a woman or girl or boy. I'm just a person.
Right. How is that different than the self-perception of someone who's non-binary?
Well, again, define non-binary for me.
My
How do you
understanding of it
what do you
now,
mean?
my understanding of the term is that those that identify as non-binary, they identify as being not a part of the male-female spectrum.
And this is
They don't define themselves as being a part of either gender.
separate from sex, right?
Yes,
Okay,
very much so.
as long as it's separate from sex, then
Right. So
like
okay. So yeah, we're okay. I think I understand. I think I understand a little bit of what you're talking about here. So there is how someone presents, which
right,
is
sure.
having the secondary characteristics that show up during adolescence.
Secondary, tertiary sexual characteristics. Yeah.
Yeah. But then there's also so there's physical appearance. There is biological structure, and then there's psychological perception. So I think we're having three
Okay.
separate conversations here.
Right. That's why I wanted
Okay.
to be clear. I agree. There's on those three categories.
Okay. All right. Cool. So you know what? And honestly, I'm not. I personally am completely fine with differentiating between those three. Now, in terms of the psychological aspect of it, psychologically, somebody who's non-binary does not perceive themselves as being either of the social normative options. So they don't see themselves as
Stereotypes.
male, they don't see themselves as female, they don't identify themselves as either.
Well, again, like so, man, woman, masculine, feminine, male, female. Like I could see man, woman, masculine, feminine, but male, female. It's like he keep putting those in there as if they're the same as the others. And to me, male, female is a biological thing.
So again, I think where and some of the difficulty that I think you and I are having, at least in terms of co-understanding, is I think you're working off of a set theory of too stringent a definition. I think you've excluded key factors in your set that are kind of creating some of this difficulty that you're having.
And I think you're too inclusive.
Yeah, look, and again, you took set theory. I mean, that's where most of set theory people who spend
But
their career doing theory.
you're saying to include how a person feels in determining their sex, and I can't agree with that. I don't care how a person feels. If you're producing sperm, male, eggs, female.
So if you're
Yeah, but
producing
again, they're
both or
not
neither,
saying.
what are you?
What? Say that again.
If you're producing both or neither, what are you?
Male and female.
So, but then again, definitionally, like we're right back to we're right back to the conversation you and I had at the beginning.
But we were talking about feelings being included in like a biological definition of sex, and I think that's inappropriate scientifically.
We'll get to that in just a second. So you don't like the inclusion. Basically your position is facts don't care about your feelings.
Yeah, I guess you could say it that way.
All right. So that's actually one of the very few things where Ben Shapiro and I actually agree. But then your position is if you produce sperm, then you are male. If you produce egg, then you are female. All right,
So
cool.
I define
But,
as being male or female.
but then if you are producing both, that means that you're both simultaneously.
Well,
That's a
it could be
separate thing.
sequentially. A lot of species are sequential hermaphrodites and not simultaneous hermaphrodites. They can
So
be
then
a male
someone's
and turn into a female and then turn back, or they don't have to be both at the same time to be
right,
a
but now you're arguing for
hermaphrodite.
gender. But now you're arguing for gender fluidity.
No, I'm just saying, like in frogs, it can be a male and then a female. That doesn't have to be both at the same time. Like it's just a fact that they produce sperm and then eggs or whatever it is. Like it changes,
Right.
and when that changes, I would say that they change sex. And if a human, and I'll give people this because I'm just a science guy. If a human changed from producing sperm to producing eggs, I would switch from calling them male to calling them female.
So
And
this
if
is
Yeah.
there's this thing called guava dolce. It's from the Dominican Spanish, and these are children born with a certain enzyme deficiency, and they're raised as girls when they're born. But around 12, when they commence puberty, their male genitalia starts to masculinize at puberty. So this phenomenon apparently occurs.
We're like, hold on. What say it, like what exactly are you trying to say?
So they essentially are born as a girl, but when they hit puberty, their
Well, what do you
male
mean they're born as a
genitalia
girl? I mean, like
they
it
don't they
starts
don't
with
have they
bipotential
don't
gonads,
have
right? And the Mullerian
they
and
don't
Wolffian ducts, and right, you guys
yeah
know all that
they
stuff,
don't
right?
have the male genitalia.
But are you guys? Let me just check some info here first. You guys are aware of what a bipotential gonad is, and that we all start with bipotential gonads,
Yeah.
Yes.
and then there's the Mullerian duct and the Wolffian ducts. You guys are aware of
Yeah.
all these things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, which are you saying that in this case is happening here?
This is a female child becoming a
No, no.
male at the
So they
onset of
started
puberty.
with bipotential gonads, and then what
No.
happened?
No, they start with the genitalia of a female,
No.
and then it
We
changes.
all
They
listen.
start with a vagina, and
Hold
it
on,
changes to a penis.
and I want to go back further. So let's start with. We all start with bipotential gonads, right? Are we in agreement here scientifically? We all start
Yeah.
with bipotential gonads, right?
Yeah.
And Mullerian and Wolffian ducts, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
We
I'm not
all
sure what the case
agree
is
on
here.
this, right? Do we all agree on this,
Yeah. But as I said,
or is
as
there
QC just
a
said,
disagreement here?
we don't know what the relevance is.
Well, I'm trying to get to that. I just want to make sure
Yep.
that we're in agreement here before I move forward. So we all agree that all humans start with bipotential gonads, right? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
don't know if
Okay.
it's all humans, but majority of them, large majority of them, unless they have some issues.
Okay. I don't know everything. If you show me something, but okay. And then they also have Wolffian and Mullerian ducts, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in this case, this person at starting there, what happened next?
They are
They have an
born
SRY
as
gene. Do they have a Y chromosome? Does the SRY gene active, inactive?
female.
No, you're jumping ahead, man. Like
No,
starting at
I'm
the
not jumping
beginning.
ahead. This is the
Starting at the
beginning, at
beginning.
birth.
What the beginning is? No, the beginning is when the sperm meets the egg, man. You should know. Come on. I don't think you're being
We've
honest,
got
scientifically
past that
honest here.
already. We've
No, we
already
haven't.
said, we've already agreed that in early fetal development, their bipotential gonads and the ducts for both are there.
Right.
Progress goes on, and a
Right. And
child
in
is
this
born.
case, what was that progress? In this case, did the SRY gene not activate, or what's going on?
No,
I would need to know that.
they have a problem with an enzyme called 5A reductase.
Okay.
And as a result, they are born with female genitalia.
Okay. So do they have an XY or XX or XXY, or what is the
They're
genotype
XY.
here? They're
XY
XY.
with what appear to be normal female genitalia.
And so did the 5' reductase inhibit the activation of the SRY gene? Or how does that work?
No, no. So
Don't know.
it's really more about the hormones, the alpha reductase 2
Right, it didn't
deficiency.
get
It's really about
testosterone. So here we go. So can I just please. So if they didn't get testosterone, they start developing female anatomy. Same as if I took estrogen, I would develop breasts and breast tissue and maybe even lactate, but that doesn't make me a female.
no,
Just because
no.
I have some
No,
female anatomy due to a developmental
so
problem.
so you taking estrogen is very different than a
It's
child during
testosterone. They didn't get
development.
testosterone then. If
During
they have XY and they develop a
during the
vagina, then they didn't have
development.
testosterone in utero.
Hey
Yeah.
guys,
So that
we're talking. We're starting to talk over each other again. So
Sorry, I think this is really important, and you guys
Sure.
keep skipping over this part that is really definitional.
no,
Like,
no. We're trying
just
to
because they
explain
develop
it,
some
but
female anatomy doesn't make them female
no.
any more
We're
than me
trying to
developing breasts from estrogen. They just developed female anatomy earlier
no.
because they didn't get
We're
Hold on,
trying
testosterone.
hold
to
on, everybody. Hold on.
no. We're
Well, then
trying to
tell
explain
me.
it. Yeah, I know. We're trying to explain what's happening, but you're immediately jumping to something else that you want to
You're
get to.
jumping to birth.
So no. So
Right.
we are trying to explain to you this particular scenario, right? So
It doesn't
first
feel
we
like
said
it. It feels like you're jumping to from sperm meets egg to birth, and you missed all the important stuff.
okay.
Right, but
How
Mia, we've
about-
already established that whether or not something feels like it's happening doesn't necessarily mean that it is. And if facts
That's
don't care
not
about your
feeling.
feelings,
That's not a feeling. That's what you
just
guys
said
are
it feels.
feeling.
You just said it feels like we're jumping ahead. So
Yeah,
let's
I'm
see if we
being
can-
nice.
let's-
I'm
let's
being
give-
nice, and you're being overly critical about that. Come on, like as a
but
courtesy. I'm like,
let's
courtesy.
give it. Let's give everybody. So
You guys
Mia-
know science. Let's talk about the science. Why are you skipping from sperm meets egg to
know,
birth?
we're-
Fill in the gap
No,
for me. Let's talk
no,
science.
that-
You guys are scientists. Come on.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So-
Let's go to sperm meets the egg. So now you get this zygote. That's XY, right? And it starts to differentiate, and it goes through the differentiation. And during that differentiation, you get formation of, like the gonads,
what
like penis, all
happened?
those.
What happened
Like-
there? Though, did the SRY gene was it absent? Did
It's
this?
got nothing to do
No,
with
no,
the
it's
SRY.
not.
Five-
It's not. It's not an SRY thing.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do
How-
with that.
why didn't it
the
get
SRY is
testosterone?
perfect. They get testosterone. It just doesn't create the hormone cascade that would normally occur because
not?
of this other because of the lack of the enzyme 5A reductase.
Alpha,
So if you
5
just stop
alpha,
1
I would
second,
still
five
call
alpha
that a male.
reductase.
I would still call
hold
that a
up.
male that developed
Hold up.
female anatomy in utero because
Yeah,
of a developmental disorder.
So
Just like
they
I don't
have
see why developing female anatomy makes them a female, like any more than me developing breast makes me a female.
So-
Why would that make me a female?
if they're born with female genitalia and ovaries.
Okay, ovarian tissue, or are they producing eggs?
ovaries. They're not adults yet. They're not
And
sexually
again,
active yet.
I want to be
When
clear
they're born,
that
they aren't
these are
producing eggs.
extremely rare conditions, and the majority of trans people are not intersex. So this isn't
I
even
understand.
applicable
Yeah, but-
to the
Wait, no.
99% of the cases. Just to be clear,
That's
I'll talk
true.
about
You're
this,
right.
but I just want to
No,
be
so
clear.
Neo, you're right. You're right.
We
The point we're trying to get at is the determination of sex is not explicitly binary. There are multiple different factors that come into play, and there are these conditions. This is just one condition. There are
Okay.
multiple different conditions.
Yeah,
that,
there's like there's so many I can't fully study all of them. There's this the intersex stuff is, and here's something. Can I give you guys something? So phenotypically, I agree. Intersex is a spectrum. It's obvious. You look at it, and it's a spectrum.
yeah.
Phenotypically, anatomically, intersex conditions are anatomically, phenotypically a spectrum.
Yeah, but again, this is the problem that
But
we
there are
we
only
have.
two types of gametes.
Yeah, a person isn't
What's
their
the third
gametes.
gamete? No, they're not the person. The person is not the gamete. They can identify whatever, but
If
their
they don't-
sex
yeah.
is the gamete. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
If they don't ever produce a gamete,
It's
then their
what
sex
their
isn't
body
their
would have
gamete.
normally. You're talking about disorders as if like Again, like if I take estrogen, I can alter my anatomy. It doesn't change my sex. Like I still, like if I get older and I stop producing sperm, it doesn't make me not male. Like it's kind of an absurd argument.
Just stop for a second. You keep shifting the goalpost here. So in one case, you say it's
I
about
think I'm shifting the
gametes.
goalpost.
Yeah. You say it's all about gametes. There are only two gametes. It's all
What
about the
type of
gametes.
gamete your body
Wait.
was developing
Let
to
me finish.
produce
Neo,
normally?
Neo, let me
How's that?
finish.
Is that a better definition?
Let me finish. There are only two types of gametes: male gametes, female gametes. That's your differentiate. That's your hard line. Is between the two gametes, and then we go along and say, well, okay, you can have an XY person who has no
Okay,
functioning.
let me explain what's
Wait.
going on. Is I'm simplifying
Let me
things
finish.
so we can talk about it more
Neo,
easily. I gave you
sorry.
a more complete definition, but you're not listening. Like
Sorry,
the more
let me
complete
finish.
definition would be, because I was just trying to keep it simple. You guys understand? I was just trying to keep it simple, right? Like a more complete scientific definition would be whatever type of gamete your body would normally have developed to produce. So there's the full definition. I was just trying to keep it simple before. There is a bed. Use that
It's
definition.
still fine. I'm still going to. I'll use that definition. It's still a problem.
Okay.
So you've got the gametes your body would normally produce. If you don't have.
Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Oh.
Yeah, what happened?
Something happened.
I think we lost Blarg.
Oh.
Hey, Blarg, we can't hear
Still on
you.
the screen.
Am I still there? Can you hear me?
There you are.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess my thing went to sleep. Okay, sorry. What I was trying to say is, if you are a person who has a Y chromosome, but is missing the SRY gene off that Y chromosome,
So
you
it's a
will
disorder
produce.
already. We're talking about disorder. It's like you're using an exception to prove a rule.
No, you're
and
using.
It's the other way around, man.
No,
you're doing it backwards.
But here's the thing: you've gone and said, what would your body normally produce? If you have an X chromosome, it would normally produce male gametes.
In humans, yeah.
But in this case, you've got a Y chromosome, but you don't normally produce.
No, would have normally developed to produce.
Yes,
like
they would have normally developed to produce.
Disorders are just this exceptional category that everybody's over fixating on.
So
not.
But you're defining two boxes. So you're saying there are only two boxes if we exclude these other people who don't fit into either box.
No.
That's exactly what you just said. You mightn't have seen yourself do it, but that's exactly it. There's only two categories, but we have to exclude these ones who have disorders.
What's the third category? What's the third gamete that someone could produce? What is it?
The people who don't produce any gametes, for example.
That's not another gamete. What is the third gamete?
So now you're back to the production of gametes.
Right, because that's what you're talking about.
So you've moved back to the...
No, I'm on topic with you. You were talking about gametes. I'm talking about gametes.
Yeah,
you just want to talk about exceptional. You're talking about disorders, and you're trying to say that that's because some people didn't develop right. Then there's a new gamete type.
I'm not saying that because you're using gametes to define. You're using gametes to define two boxes, and then you have people who won't fit into either box because they produce no gametes, and you have people who fit into both.
They would have normally. They normally would have. It's a disorder. It's an error. It's a medical condition. There was an error.
So now you've gone along and excluded a bunch of people.
What do you mean? I can still. How am I excluding them? I still put them as male or female because their body would have normally developed a certain way, and I'll put them that way.
Normally, in what way?
Like if they didn't have a disorder.
Okay, so let me just talk a little bit about evolution, right? The way evolution works is that you have a variety.
Variation of selection.
Yeah, you have a variation. You have to have a variation for evolution to work. So it isn't. And when you determine what is normal, what is the normal gene and the mutant gene, it really is arbitrary. So you could say that
in a broad sense, I agree with you, but you have to recognize that it's not developing a new type of gamete. It's not like you hit this this
Okay, I'm not saying
thing with this
I'm
other
not
thing also
saying
now.
anything about a new gamete. I'm talking about evolution, right? There's
Yeah, you're
variations.
saying that evolution could create a new gamete, and I agree,
No,
but it
no,
hasn't.
no, 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 no.
Hold on.
I'm not saying
Neil.
that. I'm not saying I'm not. That's not the point I'm trying to get to. And even if it was, you should let me get to it. I'm not going to go there, but if that was where I was going to, let me get to it. So you have these variations, and when you say one thing is a mutant and the other thing is normal and what it should be, then you're getting into some bad places. So, for example, is the white skin the normal? Should someone be have a white skin, or are they having a white skin as some kind of abnormality? So, when we talk about these variations of these different conditions, um, you may we are only pointing out the extremes, but there are different variations of this throughout the whole human population. There are people that produce different amounts of testosterone, different amounts of estrogen, different amounts of all these other enzymes, like even the 5-alpha reductase. Maybe there are people who express it in a little bit or a little too much. So there's all these variations. So when you see someone who you think is, this person is a biological male, this person is producing the male gametes, you're only looking at, you're really putting it into a whole variation of different levels of production of those into just one box. And you're not allowing for any variation amongst that.
Yeah, essentially we're
So can I respond, or
you're defining something that isn't typical as something we can exclude and just define as an error, and therefore we don't have to pay any attention to it. And it's not true, but it's also, now we've got back to the same, as was pointed out in the
well,
conversation, we've got
can I
back to
respond? I'm
the
going to forget
problem
everything.
of intersex versus gender, and it's not about intersex. Intersex is not trans, and so this argument is actually entirely tangential and pointless to the point about whether trans is a real thing, and whether a person who says that they are a trans female should be considered female by the definition of female being a term related to gender, not sex.
That's the problem.
So
Can I
I wanted to
respond?
ask you a question earlier,
Well, can I?
Neo.
You guys see, this is part of the, and this is what the line was doing a lot too. Is like if you say something that you want me to respond to, you can't just keep talking about a bunch of other things. You got to give me a chance to respond, or I'll forget what the hell you said.
I wanted just to get back to our original conversation about gender.
Well, again, like you didn't see. This is why I interrupted, because you guys aren't giving me a chance to respond. The line did that a lot too. You can't just keep talking about this thing, next thing, next thing, next thing, next thing, and then not giving me a chance to respond. Like I'll forget. I can't. I'm taking notes because but can we go one thing at a time? Like, God damn, like you can't do that. That's rude.
You dragged
the conversation. Say something and then keep doing it.
Neo,
do you agree that we have to define terms in order to be able to talk about things?
It seems like you're getting frustrated over the fact that you're not allowed to express yourself in a genuine way.
Well, what I'm saying is, if you say something, let me respond to it. Don't keep talking.
I wanted to take us back to where you took the conversation
into a bunch
tangent,
of things, and I didn't get to respond to it.
And it's not relevant.
You get mad at me for interrupting, but you're not giving me a chance to respond.
All right, Blog, let's just let him go. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then I want to bring you back to the gender question I wanted to ask you previously that we didn't get a chance to before you pulled us back over into intersex again.
Okay, but yeah, let's let Neo go ahead.
Right.
I mean, after this, we can move over to the gender discussion.
Okay, so go for it.
Do you guys agree that if you say something and then not give the person a chance to respond to it, and then move on to another topic, that why would you be surprised that the person don't want to interrupt?
Neo,
why don't you go ahead?
To respond now.
Go ahead and respond.
Right, but do you acknowledge that's what you guys are doing?
Just respond.
Well, or do you acknowledge that that's what you were doing, and that's why I was interrupting?
No. I don't actually.
Whether
You
it was
don't.
intentional or not, it's irrelevant because you're being given a chance to respond to the actual
So
points. So
please
let's
If
stay on
you,
respond.
topic and respond to what's actually important.
if I talk about 5 different points before I give you a chance to respond, and it takes so long that you forget what I said, is that fair?
Okay, go
Please
ahead.
respond
Go ahead,
No,
Neil.
but
to the
that's
question.
you guys were
We
doing that, and then like you're not
give
acknowledging that you
us
were
Okay,
doing that.
so go ahead, Neil. So okay, so let me just
Well,
explain.
acknowledge that you were doing that.
Neil,
Let me
please,
just
please.
acknowledge. Let me just acknowledge what Blarg was doing. What he was doing was steering the conversation in a different direction. But go ahead, respond to my point.
Right. So again,
yeah.
I can't remember anything you guys said because it took so long to give a chance to
Okay, so
respond.
what I was talking about was that there are variations in a population, and when you just talk about one specific exact specific binary definition of, let's say, a male, you're
We
putting
have
into a
to
box a
define
whole different
terms, right?
what you call a male. What I'm saying is within that population of male, there's a whole huge variation. That was my point.
In terms of anatomy and phenotype, I agree it's a spectrum and a mixture of 2 different types of things, male and female. I agree that it's that the phenotypical anatomical stuff is a spectrum, a mixture of 2 and only 2 male and female types of traits.
Okay.
Now, do you, like, we have to define terms to talk about things, and everybody knows that biology is complicated. Everything is like where we draw the lines. Everybody knows is fairly arbitrary most of the time when we define what words are, and that's why it's important to define terms.
Okay.
But in defining terms, in order to be able you have to do that to be able to talk about things. So how do you do that? How do you define things? You have
Okay.
to draw a line
So
somewhere.
and your line, as we understand it, is a gamete, and the production of gamete is a phenotype,
And what's
which you
your line?
so let me so production of gamete is a phenotype which you said you accept as having variations,
Because
right?
otherwise, we just throw it all out the window. We can't even talk about it. If we say there are no male or female,
Yeah,
because
it's a
there's no line.
phenotype. It's one phenotype with a lot of variations. So you agree to that, right?
In terms of anatomy and cultural presentation, like in terms of
No. We're
well,
talking
you
biology.
guys
We're
include
talking
that
about
as a
biology.
category. So I'm just trying to okay,
We're talking about a biology,
okay. I was just
biological
saying that because you
phenotype.
guys seem to care about that stuff, but I'm fine just talking about this about the science. Again, I forget what I'm saying. So can you ask me again?
So what I said was the production of the gamete, which you say is what
Oh,
determines
right. Where do
sex.
you draw your line? Was the question I'd asked.
And what I said was it's a bimodal distribution. So there isn't a box that neatly fits everyone when there
So
is that
there's
type of distribution.
okay. So in terms of gametes, let's just talk about gametes for right now. You're saying that's a bimodal distribution?
No.
No. Okay. So we agree that gametes are binary for right
Yes.
now,
So
evolutionarily, right now, for all species that sexually reproduce, the gametes are binary. Do you agree or
no,
disagree with that? Or
it's
Yes.
bimodal because you could have
no, the
someone who,
gametes. So you're saying that the
yeah, the
gametes are
gametes.
bimodal.
Yeah, yes,
So
because you could have someone
there's
that
a
expresses a lot of the gametes, express very little bit of it, or
no no
expresses
no no no
different
no.
amount at different
No.
types.
No. In
Not
terms of
type
the
in terms
existence
of
of
type. So
yeah.
a bimodal distribution of gamete type would be that there's something in between a sperm and an egg and a distribution on like a
No,
spectrum
no,
between the
no,
two. And
not like
I've
that.
never seen anything
No,
like that.
No.
not like that. I'm not
No.
just talking about the one gamete. I'm
Well,
talking about the
I'm
whole
saying let's
system, the
talk
whole
about gametes
organism,
for a second.
that expresses that gametes.
Yeah, because a person is not, an entire organism is not a single cell. It's not a gamete. An entire organism is a more complicated thing. So
Right.
what?
You're including
So
things that I would not include. So this is really the where we disagree, I think, is that you guys want to include things that I don't like, how people maybe identify or how they feel about themselves or whatever in terms of determining their biological sex. And I don't think that's appropriate. And I don't think using tertiary sexual characteristics like anatomy is relevant either, because that's those you can change with all kinds of things.
You don't just pop out a gamete. There's a whole organ structure that's required for you to produce it. Whole cellular metabolic processes that's required to produce that gamete. It's not just some tertiary characteristic. It's part of a range of different phenotypes.
But the gametes themselves are binary, right?
Yes, but not all organisms produce gametes, and then so what you are then required to you then go along and do is say that you have to define is that now you have to correct the DNA of the person in a way that you choose to create a gamete. So,
but you agreed that gametes are binary, right? Like
gametes are binary, but organisms are not.
Okay, but so we are in agreement that gametes are binary.
Yes, there are only two types of gamete.
Yep, gametes are binary. Agreed.
Yeah, just like there's only two sides on a coin. Entirely.
But what if evolution creates one that's in between? Then what would you call that?
You'd call it another gamete, but it hasn't, so there's no point discussing it. So at this point,
but you want to talk about how the potential variation, like, how do we know that there isn't some sperm that was mutated in a way that maybe could have reproduced that's fundamentally different somehow?
Because
we can
speculate on a hypothetical.
It's even less relevant.
What if there was a third gamete? What would you call that? Would you call that a third sex? Would you call a third gamete type a third sex?
No, it depends upon the organism.
You wouldn't?
What does the third gamete do? We don't know. In this case, what does it?
What if there was a third gamete type?
We don't know.
Imagine that it does. Because it doesn't exist. We're all in hypothetical land right now anyway. So just imagine that there was one.
What does it do?
It helps with
reproduction. I'm gonna. Hey, hold on. I'm gonna stop it right here. We're not in hypothetical land. We're not in some alien world with 5 different sexes.
That is what you would call a third sex.
Neo. Okay, Neo. Here's why, to me personally, in this conversation,
what would you call it then?
Neo, I'm trying to address your point, and why, for myself personally, for the purposes of this conversation, your question is a red herring, and here's why. Because we can speculate on a hypothetical, and we can.
But you guys were dealing with evolution.
Neo, you didn't like it when people interrupted you, and you didn't get
doing what you were doing.
No, actually, Neo, I was the one who was trying to make sure that you stayed on topic and were given a chance to express yourself.
Well, you guys were doing hypotheticals too.
What I'm trying to tell you. See, I've never given you a hypothetical. I've stuck specifically to
somebody was.
We're not talking about somebody right now, Neil. We're talking about you and me. Okay? So let's just talk about you and me right now. Now, the hypothetical is irrelevant, and here's why. Because we can literally make that hypothetical do whatever we want it to, regardless and separate from the science that you say you want to cling to as part of the definition for your terms. Since your standard is the science and the facts, you're trying to include and bring in this hypothetical is counter to the very structure of the argument that you started this conversation doing. Now, we can change the structure of your argument. We can change the structure of your conversation. We can change the structure of what it is that we want to be talking about, but that's a completely separate conversation and a completely separate outcome that we want to be able to achieve. I was under the impression that you wanted to discuss whether or not trans people existed, whether or not trans people should be recognized. Now, do you no longer want to continue on that line of conversation?
The purpose of giving that example. Now, don't be like Matt. Don't be like Matt.
See,
Let
right
me
now the one
let me respond.
right now the one who's being the most
Let
like mad is you.
let
Because
me
right now
respond.
I'm just talking about you and me right now. We're not talking about the other folks in this conversation. We're not talking about
Stop
anything
being
that
so
may or may not have happened.
controlling.
I'm not trying to
You're being
control
a
you.
tyrant.
I'm
You're being a
I'm trying to
tyrant.
hold you.
Let me
See,
respond.
you're trying to talk over me as I'm responding to you,
You're
and
not
you're trying to
letting me
dominate the
respond.
conversation, which is so you're being more
I'm talking over you
like Matt.
because you're not letting me respond, like I said earlier. Let me
So
respond.
go for it.
And don't be a tyrant. Let me
Just
respond, please.
please do it.
Please respond.
Go for it.
The purpose of that example is to illustrate what a third sex would be.
It can be whatever we want it to because it's a
No.
hypothetical.
If there
How is it
was
not?
a third gamete type, you would call it a third sex, right?
Not necessarily,
Why?
because we don't know what that does, or whether
Reproduce.
that's too vague.
What
The
do you mean?
problem is you could have say a person you think of as male starting to produce a cell that doesn't look like a sperm, but is somehow involved in the process. They produce sperm and this other type of cell. Are they a third sex?
Okay.
So now it's
So
important as to what it is, but it
let me
isn't
respond, please.
relevant.
Well, let me respond. So you want a little more specifics. Okay. So in the imaginary scenario, so say how sperm and egg meet and then they make a new life form. Say there was another one that could meet either one of those two and make a new life form.
Right,
Is
that's
that
a
better?
nice
Is that
simple
better?
one.
Does that help?
Yep. I'd in fact even considered that one previously. Yes, so you might then argue that is a third sex if that
Would you say
gamete
it's a third
is found.
sex?
What? But not necessarily, because it depends where that gamete is found. So, if
Why?
that
Why would where
gamete,
it's found matter?
because if that gamete is found only in male testes,
Mm, okay, it has a new
then
type of
are
tissue.
they a?
It's a new gonad, new tissue, new gamete
Yep.
type, and it
Yeah.
reproduces with either of the existing ones. How
All
about
right.
But
that?
you
So
still
hey,
only
Neo.
have.
Wait.
Yeah.
So let's. I mean, we're wasting time on this. Neo,
Well,
Yeah.
no, you
get to
would
your
call that
point.
a third sex, and
Get to your. Yeah, that's fine.
if that's a third
Okay.
sex, then what else?
Sure.
Like that is
Cool.
what
Okay.
sex is.
Cool.
No,
Then
Neo, get
that's
to the
fine. That's
punchline.
fine. Okay. So we
Get to
say
the
it's third
punchline.
sex. So what? So what? Get to the point.
Yeah.
that's what I
That's
said.
actually a
So
good
then
call.
that's what sex is. That's what a third sex would look like. If it's not that, then it's not a third sex.
Okay. All right.
Because that's
So
what a third sex would look like. That's what a
okay.
third sex
So
would be.
that sure, that's fine. So there's an organism where
So
you have a hypothetical third sex because they have a third gamete type. Okay.
right.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's what a third sex would be.
Okay.
So if
Yeah.
it's not
But
that, then it's not a third
who's?
sex.
So
No
that's
one's
fine.
making an
Okay.
argument about the existence
You
of a third
would.
sex.
No,
No.
No, we're
not about the
making an.
existence. But what I'm saying is that's to illustrate that that's what a third sex would look like. That's what it would behave. That's what it would be.
But
And what you guys are saying is not that.
who's arguing that there
Okay.
is a third sex?
No, it's
That's the problem. You're creating an
I'm
argument.
using
You're
it as an
saying that
example to show
no,
you
no.
what a third sex would be, and saying if
Okay.
what you guys are saying is
Sure.
not that. What
Who's
you
Okay,
guys are
that's
talking
fine.
about is
who's
We'll
not
concede.
what a
Hey,
third sex would be.
just for the sake of time, we'll concede. Okay, that's what a third
right?
sex is. If there's a third
Well, you
hypothetical
agreed that that would
gamete
be
that's
what a
found.
third sex
Yeah.
is before the sake of time. You
Okay.
already agreed to that
Okay.
without the time
Yep.
constraint.
Yep. That's fine.
And then what you guys are
So
saying
that's a
is
third
not that,
sex.
correct? And what you guys are saying is a third sex is not a third gamete type, which you said would be a third sex, right?
So
No,
you
we're just
came up
saying it
with
doesn't fit into your easy boxes of two sexes.
yeah. So
Three.
you're saying that there's a way to come up with the third sex by hypothesizing a third
No,
gamete.
I'm
That's
saying
fine.
that's what a third sex would be, and what you guys are saying is not that. So it's not a third sex
So
because
that's
it's
the only
not what a
No,
third
no,
sex
possibility.
would
we
That's
did
the
be.
only
not we
possible
did not
option.
say that. We did not say that if there's a third gamete that somehow you won't have a third sex. What we were saying was that we
That's
wouldn't
not what I
know
said.
until we
I
knew.
acknowledge that you agreed with that. That's what it would be. But what I'm saying is what you guys are using to determine sex is not what biologically a third sex would look like.
But
So I'm
nobody's
saying that the
arguing for the
criteria that
existence
you're
of
That's
a third
using,
fine.
sex.
I'm saying the criteria that you're using to determine sex is inaccurate, because to determine a third sex would be that other thing that you said would be a third sex. You all agreed
No,
that's what a
no,
third
no.
sex is, and the stuff you
Nobody
You're
guys are
looking
talking
at it in
about
the
is
wrong
so
way.
different from that.
Neo,
The stuff
All
you
right,
guys
hold
are
on.
Neo,
using to determine a third
Neo,
sex is not what a third sex would
Neo,
be.
Okay, all
Do you
right,
understand
Neo,
what I'm
Neo,
saying?
Neo. All right,
Neo.
Neo, you've repeated yourself about a half a dozen times in about 3
You keep
minutes.
repeating
Yeah.
me
Blard,
wrong. Is why I keep
Neo,
having to say
hold
it,
on.
because you guys aren't
Neo.
seeming to understand.
It sounds like Blard would like to respond to that. Do you have a problem with
Yeah.
Blard responding to what you just said?
Go ahead.
Nobody is claiming that there is a third sex. Only you.
I didn't say that.
Hold on.
It's like you
But
missed my point.
no. But you must be, because you're saying that there aren't three sexes. So somebody must be saying that there's three sexes. Who's
No,
saying that there's three
no,
sexes?
no,
Your original
no.
piece. Just let
But
me
see,
let me
this
just
you're not.
state
You
it for
didn't
the fact.
understand. So it's very
There
clear now
aren't.
that you didn't understand my point.
No.
It's very clear.
Just
What
let
I'm
me
saying
finish.
is,
Neo, let me finish.
you're
I'll
you're
repeat
not
your original
understanding me
OP.
correctly. You
There
you
is no
don't
third
understand what I'm
sex
saying right now.
because there is no third gamete. That's your OP.
No, that's not
So,
what I just said. That is not the
no,
point that
that's
I'm
your OP.
making. That
That
is
was where
not
we
the point that
started.
Okay.
I'm
Hey,
making.
Blarg,
Please,
Blarg.
somebody just
Okay.
tell me
Okay.
that you
Neo,
understand what
Neo,
I'm saying.
Neo, Neo.
You guys are
Can you just
smart.
like
Come on.
Neo? Without all the kind of little insults that you're kind of throwing in there, can you
No,
just
I took
explain again?
compliment. I'm saying you guys
Can
are
you?
smart.
Can
What's your
you?
OP?
I don't understand what
Yeah.
the
Can
barrier
you
is here.
reiterate? Can you reiterate your point?
So you guys all agreed that that's what a third sex would be,
That's a way.
and then you're using other criteria.
Okay, so I
Who?
think Blarg, what he's saying is that the only possible way to get a third sex is through a third gamete. And
Yeah.
we are wrong because we said that there are other possible ways that, we weren't saying that there are other possible ways of, that there could be a third sex, because we haven't talked about third sex. What we have always said was that there are two sexes that are presented in a bimodal distribution. That's all we've said.
Wait, just to be, it sounds like you understand what I said, I think, and you made a good point too, that you guys are saying that there are other ways to create a third sex, right?
No, we're not
No.
saying that.
No.
We're not saying
No.
that.
No. We're
Well,
definitely
then
not
what are you
saying
doing?
that.
Okay, so
That
that
all
is
the
the
way
only
along,
way
we
to create
haven't
a
been
third
saying
sex.
that. No,
So
we aren't saying that there are a third sex. Nobody is saying that there's
no,
a
no,
third sex.
no. Hold on.
Who,
Calm down here.
who's saying that?
Okay, so I think
What we're
somebody on
go.
here said something very close, that it was that I gave a way for a third sex to exist, and then he said that I felt like he was saying that there are other ways that a third sex could exist. Now, are you guys saying that or no?
I think
There's
so. I
heaps
think
of other
here's
ways.
what's happened, Blarg. So when we were talking about intersex, where you have an organism that
Well, can
produces
you
neither
answer the
gametes
question
or
like directly,
oh
Neil,
or
wait,
please.
Hold on.
Neil, I'm trying
Yeah.
to. I'm really trying. I really am. So when we were talking about intersex and kind of other scenarios where you could have an organism, an individual that produces both gametes or produces neither, and what we are saying is that those examples don't fit neatly into that binary of male or female. That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
That's where John Clark was talking about set theory and all that. It's
okay,
about how
I
you're.
think I understand what you are saying. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're saying that you can only have a third sex when there's a third gamete.
Nope.
It's that simple.
That's not what I said.
And
I,
what?
I said that if there was a third gamete, then that would be a third sex.
Yeah. Yeah. Happily,
Yeah,
perfectly fine with that.
that's
Yeah, it
fine.
And
makes sense.
Yep.
That's fine.
I'm asking, are you guys saying there is another way to create a third sex?
No, like
No,
I
you're not
said,
saying that.
we're not saying that. What we're saying is that
So are you
sex
saying that
is a
that is the only way to
bimodal.
create a
That
third?
sex
Wait,
is
wait.
a bimodal distribution. Again, bimodal
Can you just
distribution, and
answer directly?
it's not strictly binary, and this kind of hypothetical third sex, we don't even care because it's hypothetical.
Can you answer me directly, please?
Is there a third sex? No.
No, not that. See, again, it's like you're not. This is why I'm getting mad, because I feel like you're not understanding me here. I'm trying to be very specific. So, if there was a third gamete, you agreed that would be a third sex, and then I
Yep.
asked,
Sure,
"Is
that's
there?
Then
fine.
it'd be a trimodal.
Wait. So, and then I asked, "What are you saying? Is there another way to create a third sex?" And you said no. So then,
Yeah.
are you saying that that is the only way to have a third sex is by having a third gamete? Is that what you're
No,
saying or not?
no, we're not saying that's the only
So you
way.
are saying there is another way, because
Well, we
you're
don't
saying there
No,
is or there isn't.
we
Are you
don't
don't
saying
know.
know.
there
There
is
isn't
or there
one.
isn't?
There isn't one. There
Another
isn't
way,
one.
another way. Are you
I don't
saying
know.
there
I
is
don't
or
know.
isn't another way?
We don't know. We don't know. You came up with one example. That doesn't mean there's no other examples.
That's what I wanted to know,
Well,
is
question.
what your opinion
Here's
on that question was.
here's a
Specific
question for you. If we want to
question.
go hypothetical,
So, well,
let
there's more. It can
let's
keep going with this. This line of reasoning is not done.
no. Let's go with a different hypothetical
You
on
just want
third
to change
sex.
subjects now.
No, it's the
You
same
don't like where
subject.
it's going, or
It's
what?
just no. It's the same
Yo,
subject. It's
please,
exactly the
simplicity.
same.
There's a line
Let's
of reasoning I was progressing through, and you're cutting me
yeah.
off. So
No, it will help clarify the situation. I'm sure it will. Now, let's say we have a species that has organisms that produce X chromosomes, and we have an organism that produces Y chromosomes, and we have an organism that produces male gametes, and an organism that produces female gametes. Let's say that exists in a given species, and we have an organism that produces neither of them, but is the organism in which gestation occurs. It does not produce either. It is required for the species to propagate. So the male organism has to have sex with it, and the female organism has to have sex with it in order for it to become pregnant and produce offspring. Would that be another sex?
it's actually a really interesting example, but I would hesitantly say no,
Why not?
because I mean, you could like artificially put it in a womb kind of thing. It's the gametes are the important part.
This is they
Like
none of the organisms have uteruses, so
to
they're incapable of
reproduce.
producing.
Right. I don't care about the anatomy thing. Like, in order to reproduce the organism, you would only need the gametes. And you could create artificial everything else, an artificial environment for it to gestate in or whatever.
That's not in the real world.
But the organism isn't going to be able to reproduce. It's not going to. It doesn't have that technology.
You could go along and say
I
you
could put a
get rid
baby in a
of.
fake womb, and it doesn't
Yeah,
make
but
it
you
a
could
third
go along
sex.
and get rid of males entirely out of humanity, and say there's only one there if you go along and artificially produce pathogenic or XX crossed. So you work out an artificial
a lot of
way.
species don't use the genome anyway for sex.
But that's the point still. Now you have to invent a technological solution to make this other sex go away. They exist in this hypothetical biology of a male organism, a female organism, and a gestational organism. They are three separate individuals that are required for the process of producing offspring in the natural world, in this hypothetical natural world. In what way isn't that organism not a sex?
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. It's really fascinating, honestly. I'm enjoying thinking about it. But again, I would really, in order to give you like a really hard answer on that, I would have to think about it more. But my original instinct is still that, like, just because, like, say somebody doesn't have a womb doesn't make them another sex or something. Like, I still
but
think
in this
that
case,
the fundamental essence, because we have to create definitions, we have to draw a line somewhere. I think in order to be able to talk
why wouldn't
about
you
things,
draw the?
I would draw the line on like the most fundamental aspect of reproduction, which would be the gametes. And again, that's in your scenario is very interesting, and I think you do have a point there. And again, I softly define a lot of things, but in terms of of biology, in terms of doing sexes, it's just so clear in nature that there are two. And
Yeah,
maybe
And
but
if
that's
there was
fine.
a
this is
And that's
not.
fine.
This is
suggested
And I
hypothetical
think
organ,
nature.
wait, I
This
maybe
is
think
if
we
there was
all
hypothetical
agree.
nature.
you have a
We
good
all
argument.
agree.
You have a good
We all
argument.
agree that there are two sexes. So I mean, I
Right.
think we kind of went a little bit too long on just talking
Yeah.
about the sexes, because trans is not, as we said at the beginning, is about
Yeah.
a person saying that, a person with a penis saying that they can get a pregnant. Uh, so that's not what the trans issue is about. And we
Yeah.
touched a little bit on
Well,
about their kind of.
if you guys want, since I pretty clearly know where we disagree, and I don't think that's going to change, we can expand to other aspects of this conversation, including like cultural things, if you want. I'm open to that.
All right, so let's just stop it here. You can, if you are able, if your schedule allows, come back next week and let's kind of focus on the the
Trans
gender
part.
aspect of it,
Yep.
and not the sex, because I think we all agree that there are two biological sexes, right? Agreed?
Yeah.
Okay,
They're two
agreed. All right.
gametes. They form a spectrum of phenotype.
I'll agree with that.
All right. Okay. So let's come back next week and we'll
Yeah.
continue on the discussion in terms of the gender aspect of
Can I
it.
ask
So
real quick though, like what
Yeah.
what kinds of issues are you thinking of that are important to talk about in that other context?
Well, it could be a relatively quick one, because we kind of ran out a bit of time. I wanted to ask earlier. This is where I wanted to go back to, was a question about if you woke up tomorrow with breasts, would you want to get rid of them?
I
And
don't
if
know.
so, why? And if not, why not? That's a great thing to think about until next week. And we can get back to that because that's connected to how you see yourself inside your head.
No,
And
I think I'd have to go through it, but
yeah,
And
So-
I would the aspect of the conversation that I found concerning, and I would like to explore a little bit further with you, Neo, is this idea. You would say things like, "Well, that's an abnormality that doesn't count," or "That's you didn't say abnormality." I'm trying
well, it
to remember
doesn't change their sex in my mind.
it's a
Oh.
deformity.
If they
Deformity.
develop female anatomy, to me that doesn't change their sex.
Right. So what I found concerning is this assertion on your part that because something is a atypical, therefore it does not count, and that's actually an aspect of the
Well,
conversation that I would like to.
I wouldn't say that I would say that. I mean, I would define them all still as male or female. All intersex conditions in my mind would still be male or female. They're just regardless of anatomy or their feelings.
all right,
Right,
let's
but-
let's carry on
Yeah.
this
Yeah, but the
discussion
point-
next
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
All right.
And I would like to point out, that I mean it got a little heated at times here, but overall, I think this is actually a far more civil conversation than it might have been in other circumstances, and I hope that you had a more pleasant experience here than you've had at other times when you've tried to have this conversation with people.
And by
Yeah.
the way, Neo, you don't need to compare us to the Line or Matt or whatever. If you object to what we're doing, you object to what we're doing. We're not Matt or we're not whoever.
Yeah.
So
Right, you're
just
not them, but you can act like them, and I feel it's fair to mention it since I went through that experience. And you're saying you're not acting like them, but sometimes you do.
so me acting like something that someone did doesn't make me them.
Correct, I agree, but it makes
Agreed?
you
All right,
act.
great.
I'm just stating that you are acting in a similar way, and it's a negative way.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not really
that 'cause-
relevant to our discussion, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
To
point
topic,
being,
but
Neo,
to the structure of the conversation, like you have to give people a chance to respond, because I'll forget if you keep changing one topic. You just keep making point after point after point. You're not giving me a chance. I'm going to forget. I'm going to get frustrated. I'm going to start to interrupt
That's all right.
because I'm going to be rude if you're being rude.
Does genetic abnormality mean that the person?
Okay,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
come on, John.
Next
We're
week.
Sorry,
Too.
I
sorry.
need to
Yep,
I need
my
to
bad.
end this stream.
Yeah.
So
Hey man,
so
I don't mind talking to you off this if there's some way to contact you or something.
You know what?
so
If you've got
yeah,
contact,
actually,
if you've
John.
got somebody's contact information, like QC or Blarg of any of those folks, they've got my contact information. We can do email. We can do whatever, man. You seem sincere. You seem earnest, and I certainly enjoy talking with you. And I hope that your experience wasn't unpleasant.
And can I say one last thing is I understand where you guys are coming from, and I do have sympathy for the trans community. So I don't want you guys to take it the wrong way.
No, understood.
Yeah.
That's understood. By the way, if you're on Twitter, you can just DM me for information, and I can give you information on John Clark, and you guys can get together.
Yeah. Gladly.
Okay, cool.
And
All right.
Neo, I mean, have you been completely scared off of coming back here again?
No, this is enjoyable to me. I'm sorry I got a little heated, but
It happens. It happens. But
All right.
I've been
Let's
traumatized
see
a lot, man.
everyone. Let's see everyone back here next week. Thank you, everyone, for being on. And of course, I always like to thank the people on the live chats. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to put up some of the things that you've said here, but the live chats are on the replay, so you can go back and see what everyone said. So with that,
can
yeah.
do you guys ever talk about men's rights? I have to throw that out there because that is actually my issue. I don't really care too much about this stuff.
we can
Okay,
talk about
depending
that
on
next
where
week.
we get on the
Yeah, if we
trans
find
thing,
time.
there might be, there might be plenty of time to talk about men's rights.
It's a tough question.
Yep,
I
yep,
think,
definitely. All right, okay,
Cool.
everyone, I'm gonna stop it right here, and we will see everyone next week. And have a pleasant evening.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Good night. Be well.